Branding iron. A heated iron was pressed onto the skin to leave a permanent scar, often used to mark criminals, slaves, or prisoners for life. The pain and disfigurement were both a punishment and a form of public humiliation. Brazen bull. A hollow bronze bull where the victim was placed inside. A fire was lit beneath it, causing the person to be slowly roasted alive while their screams echoed through the bull's pipes, resembling a bull's roar. Breast ripper. A torture device used mainly on women accused of adultery or heresy. The claws of the device would tear and mutilate the victim's breasts, often resulting in death. Castor oil. The victim was force-fed large quantities of castor oil, causing severe diarrhea and dehydration. This method was used more for its humiliating and physically weakening effects than to cause death. Head crusher. The head was placed between a metal cap and a bottom bar, which was slowly tightened. As the device was cranked, the skull was crushed, often causing the eyes to burst and leading to death by brain trauma. Iron chair. A chair covered in sharp spikes, where the victim was strapped tightly, preventing movement. Sometimes a fire was lit underneath, causing burns in addition to the agony of the spikes. Keelhauling. A maritime punishment where the victim was dragged beneath the ship's hull, scraping against barnacles and debris. Many died from drowning, injuries, or shock. Lingchi. Also called death by 1,000 cuts, this was a form of execution where the victim was slowly dismembered, with small pieces of flesh being cut off over time until they died. Pendulum. A sharp, swinging blade was slowly lowered toward the victim. While the process was designed to terrorize, the pendulum would eventually slice into the body, leading to a slow, agonizing death. Rack. One of the most infamous torture devices, where the victim's hands and feet were tied and pulled in opposite directions. The tension would dislocate joints and eventually tear the body apart. Scavenger's daughter. A metal A-shaped frame that compressed the body, causing crushing pressure on the chest and spine. This could lead to broken bones and ruptured organs. Pau de Arara. A Brazilian form of torture where the victim was hung from a bar, often with arms and legs tied, and beaten or shocked, causing severe pain and sometimes permanent damage. Tongue tearer. A device with pincers designed to grasp and rip out the victim's tongue, often used on those who spoke blasphemy or lies. Strappado. The victim's hands were tied behind their back, and they were hoisted into the air by a rope. The sudden jerking motion as they were dropped caused severe shoulder dislocation and pain. Oubliette dungeon. A dungeon that was often nothing more than a hole in the ground. The victim was thrown in and left to starve, often forgotten in complete darkness. Gibbeting human cages. Criminals were locked in iron cages and left to die from exposure. The cages were often hung in public places where people could see the slow, agonizing death of the prisoner. Spanish tickler. A sharp, claw-like device used to tear the flesh from the victim's body, often resulting in mutilation or death from blood loss and infection. Bamboo torture. In this method, bamboo shoots were grown under the victim's body. Bamboo, which grows quickly, would eventually pierce through the skin, leading to a slow and painful death. Flaying alive. The victim's skin was carefully peeled away in strips while they were still alive. This brutal punishment could take hours, and death usually came from shock or infection. Judas chair. A pyramid-shaped chair where the victim was lowered, with the point inserted into their orifices. The pressure caused intense pain and internal damage over time. Iron maiden. A tall iron cabinet with spikes on the inside. The victim was enclosed within it, and as the doors were shut, the spikes impaled their body in non-lethal areas, prolonging the agony. Spanish donkey. The victim was placed astride a sharp, triangular wooden apparatus and weights were tied to their legs. This method caused severe pain, cutting into the flesh as the weights increased the pressure. Crocodile shears. Used to sever fingers, toes, or genitals, this device had teeth that gripped and tore the flesh. It was often used on traders to ensure a slow, humiliating punishment. Chinese water torture. A form of psychological torment where cold water was dripped slowly onto the forehead. Over time, the repetitive drops drove the victim insane due to the unrelenting monotony and discomfort. Thumb screw. A simple yet brutal device used to crush the thumbs or fingers. As the screws were tightened, they caused excruciating pain and permanent damage. Whirligig. The victim was placed in a device that spun them rapidly, disorienting and terrifying them. It was often used to cause extreme dizziness, nausea, and psychological distress.